Welcome everybody, and good morning on behalf of Audiovisual Producers Finland and the Tampere Film Festival to the VFX panel. I thought we'll just dive straight into it, and I'll start introducing the panelists. We've got a lot to cover. So on my left is Jonna Isotaulus. Maybe you could tell a bit about your background and what your role is in the world of VFX.
Hi, my name is Jonna Isotaulus, and I've been working as a compositor for about 15 years in different countries and different VFX companies. So some companies I could mention are, like, I worked in Weta Digital for 5 years. Then I worked in, that's in New Zealand. Then I worked in ILM, Singapore, and I've been working also in MPC, for example, in London and Vancouver. And last year I decided to do something different. So at the moment I'm teaching media at Keuda. So that's I'll do that for this year, and let's see what I'll be doing again next year. So on.
Great, thanks Jonna. And then Samuli.
Good morning. My name is Samuli Torssonen, and I'm a VFX supervisor / filmmaker. Filmmaker comes from Star Trek and Iron Sky. Star Trek was released in 2005. It was an independent film. I did all the visual effects, and it took 7 years. And after that, we started a company and did Iron Sky. I was the co-producer in that film, and also the VFX supervisor, and built the whole team. And after 2012, I've founded Troll VFX, and I've been working there as a VFX supervisor, 10 years now, and actually last week it was my last day there. So there has been some changes in my life, and VFX supervisor is a person who communicates with the film production, the director, and the producer side, and also communicates with the VFX studio. So basically, I'm responsible for planning the shots, how they are going to be shot, together with DOP and director. And of course, when it comes to the finalization, I'm part of that process as well. So kind of communicating between the production and the studio, VFX studio.
Hey, my name is Ilmari Huttu-Hiltunen, and today I'm here representing TAMK, Tampere University of Applied Sciences, and the VFX artist specialization education program. And my background is I have been doing a bit of everything in this field for in past 20 years. I used to be working at Finnish broadcasting company, and then started as a director, sound designer. But I've been working with these emerging media technologies over 10 years now already, and started my first company in 2015, kind of in this XR field. I'm also a founder and creative director in Keho Interactive, which is a virtual production software company operating, for example, the Finnish broadcasting company's virtual studio, and the software is used also at Aalto University and also North American, for example, Ubisoft esports series. And now I'm responsible teacher in the VFX program. Yeah.
Great, thanks. And we also have some panelists online representing their companies, and as I'm sure there's also some audience online. So let's talk to our virtual panelists. Maybe Anna, you can go first.
Yes, hello, my name is Anna Knochenhauer, and currently I'm mostly working as a post-producer for various, mostly Swedish TV shows and features. The last thing I did a couple of years ago was a series called The White Wall that you also had in Finland. It was a Finnish show in Swedish, shot in Finland. I'm also a producer and I've worked in this industry for like 25 years, and I've always sort of geared towards post, and a lot of the shows I'm in are fairly VFX heavy for a Swedish level. So I'm passionate about that, and I'm also very passionate about planning productions together on a really early stage to make them as smart and cost effective and great as possible.
Great, thank you. And then we have two representatives from Fireframe. Maybe you could introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, sure. I'm Marcus. I'm a technical director here at the Fireframe Studios, and for the productions I usually work as a virtual production supervisor also. And my background is from 3D VFX, real-time 3D.
Yep, hi, I'm Sami Arola. I'm kind of like the odd bird here. I'm actually like switched over from the gaming industry where I've been working for like 25 years, founded a couple of companies, for example, together with Mikko Kodisoja, who's the founder of Fireframe. My background is actually like a very heavy duty 3D graphics programmer, but I've been like messing around with all kinds of different productions, ranging from like audio side to video production, and I'm technically the nerd of the company.
Great. And since Fireframe is quite a new company in Finland, could you maybe tell a bit more about the company and what you guys do for the audience, since you're doing something quite new and exciting?
Well, we're kind of a movie studio. We're using this LED wall technology that's people usually know about it from for example, from Mandalorian Disney TV series, that you can kind of shoot different locations in the studio. Instead of doing green screen, we can use a big LED volume, so we can get the kind of the background live, and we can get really nice lighting also from the LED wall setup.
Yeah, so the key thing here is basically real-time 3D stuff. So it's a little bit different from doing stuff on the post.
Yeah, great. And for the audience, sometimes that's also referred to as virtual production. If you didn't know that, I didn't for a year ago. And that leads me to maybe briefly introduce myself. I'm Timo Suomi. I'm a producer at Animavita, the animation company here in Finland, but I've got a background in both production and distribution. So I'll be representing the least knowledgeable segment of the audience. So I know the least, so I can ask the questions and hopefully be a bridge between the experts here and everybody else. So we've got a lot to cover today. So we're gonna tackle both the workflow of VFX productions, especially what it means for independent producers and filmmakers. Then we'll dive a bit deeper into virtual production, and at the end talk a bit about the future of the VFX community, and especially how to train talent that's much needed, especially a country the size of Finland. So the big question or thesis of this panel is that as the role of VFX is growing and becomes more accessible to filmmakers, it should be included better in the overall planning of productions and not considered as just we'll fix it in post or do it as part of the post-production. So, and just before I ask the first question to the panelists, please feel free to comment on the other panelists' answers or ask follow-up questions. You know more than me about certain topics, so if you feel like there's something the audience should know about a specific part, please feel free to ask anything you feel like. Let's set the stakes here. So the panelists, from your perspective, if VFX is planned too late in a production, what impact will it have on a production and why? And maybe let's start with Anna.
Well, it gets either more expensive or not as great as it could have done if it was planned well ahead of even pre-production, in in my experience. I always try to influence the producers and even choose the producers I work with to start early. And usually I come in very early, even sometimes before the directors are on board, so we can discuss together how to plan this. But I would say that it has an economical impact, and the production is usually more stressful, and post-production is more stressful and very much more expensive. That's the short answer.
Okay, great. And I guess from producer's point of view, the more expensive things get, the more it limits the filmmaker's vision.
Yeah.
And I wonder if
exactly.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, of course, the price, the costs, and of course the quality of the final film will suffer. There's a lot of things that cannot be shot that would have made a huge impact to the final production. And I think that's really important. And I think it's a really good idea to kind of start, even if your script isn't done yet. I think it's a good idea to pass it on to somebody who can say kind of a ballpark, hey, this is 1 million VFX or 2 million, so that if the script is still being developed, kind of you can react to that early on.
Yes, indeed. And besides the early planning, do you guys see any other ways of reducing the risks or costs? Is it to bring?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I teach some, and then I usually bring up an example. I did a space film a couple of years ago that I also produced together with a colleague called Alone in Space for 2 million euros, and it's only set in space more or less, and we had to be smart about it. So we planned really early, not just with the VFX people, but also with the DP and the production designer and the director, of course. So trying to sort of decide on the method of how to create what's not existing in real life, so we can't just put the camera there. So like deciding on how many times do we need to sort of sell the illusion? How many places on the spaceship need to be big enough? How many times do we need to look out the window? We had a really good plan, and we made it in on budget or under budget, and I think the result is really stunning with the budget we had. But it had to do with us being a really small production, where I was one of the producers, but also the post producer, and she was also the production manager. So there were not too many people that had to understand or listen to us when we had this idea. I find it much harder on the bigger productions with bigger budgets, with not so experienced producers. When I try to explain that this is the way to go, plan together really early to make the best out of the production value and the budget. So I don't remember exactly what you were asking, but did that sort of answer your question, or?
Yes, and actually I have a follow-up question. That maybe I missed something as well. At what point of the production did you start the plan? Was this?
Oh, sorry, that was about a couple of months before pre-production started. We did this together and stuck to it all the way through. I tried to do the same thing on the show I mentioned before, the White Wall, but it was really tough to get pretty much anyone to understand why we needed to do this so early. So let me say that it was not such a smooth ride compared to the $2 million space feature film because of the poor planning ahead and working together on the early stage. It's really tough.
Okay. And would you say, did it have an impact on the script writing at a last stage, or was it more about blocking the scenes?
It had to do with some of the script writing, because we changed some of the locations for them to be more, to be easier to build or build in 3D. But for the feature film, we were in a really good shape at that stage. So we didn't really change all that much. It was just a few minor things. But we also, in addition to planning all of this together really closely, we also did what do you call it? It's I just forgot the word in English and Swedish. I'll get back to it when I remember it, because it's really a good idea as well. But I'll get back to it when I remember it.
Sure. Any other panelists have any war stories to share?
Yeah, I think the pre-planning is kind of especially if you don't have huge amount of VFX money, like in Iron Sky, we faced these questions. Is it cheaper to build this concrete wall or build it in CG? We asked quotes from the set building department and got a number, and then we calculated, okay, if we do it like this and only have this amount of shots, it's more cost efficient to do it in post. And I think it's really, if you want to be cost efficient in post production, you need to have really good plans. We blocked out all the major shots. We had these stupidly looking clumsy actors, kind of super blocky actors, and all these important scenes we went through with the DOP. We decided the lenses. We kind of looked through the digital camera and saw we need a green screen, this height 6 meters, and we cannot do this kind of a shot because we ran out of green screen. So it's really important to kind of plan this. And of course, it's even more important to kind of stay in the plan. That's kind of and of course for filmmakers who have done little VFX work, I'm sure it feels very limiting. You only can afford 2 wide shots in this scene, and that's about it. And you need to frame it so that you don't see that set extension there, so that you can manage with this small set piece.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the director and the VFX supervisor needs to be kind of on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have?
I could also say something about, from an artist point of the view, like if there's going to be lots of changes in the end of the project, where, for example, compositors work, there's for example, there would be a whole new sequence suddenly, then you only have limited amount of people working there, and suddenly there's going to be another sequence. So then all these, for example, if you have 50 people working in comp, you have to spread the work for these people, and if you haven't had a plan before, the compers need to work 24 hours. So you also have to plan ahead how many people you have in the production. And yeah, that's really important. Otherwise, the people get burned out, and in general, there's not enough people at the moment, for example, and that's why I guess we are also having this new course coming in Finland.
Yeah. So some of you have touched on this earlier, but I think we should dive into it a bit deeper. So say there's a producer or filmmakers with limited VFX experience, but maybe a bit more experience in making other types of films. Who's the person to help them do this? Who should they contact, and what would be the best way to sort of get the ball rolling? Do you want to maybe Samuli start?
You mean if the VFX, if the production is not so VFX, they don't understand that much?
Yeah, and they've decided to say make a period film or maybe something with fantastical elements. They've got experience in making films, but much less in VFX. So they recognize that they need help, but they don't know who and what the help would look like.
I guess it's pretty simple that if you need help with choosing cameras, you ask the DOP. So VFX Supervisor is one of the head of the departments.
Yes.
So you need to pick one for your production. It can be maybe just for consulting, he or she doesn't stay the whole production, but of course it's really important to get kind of some information before going to the battle.
Yeah. And you'd see.
I have. Can I comment on that? I'm just curious how it's like in Finland, because in Sweden there are like 3 freelance VFX supervisors that productions can hire and have with the production. Everyone else is in different VFX companies. What's the situation about that in Finland?
I think I'm going to throw it back to you, Samuel, because I think you knew the field best.
Are there enough people for the work that you're explaining about?
I think that's kind of one of the problems also, that all the VFX supervisors have been attached to the companies, and of course all the bigger productions I'm talking about in US and UK. Yeah. The production company has their own supervisor, and right from the beginning, basically it's kind of you don't go to court without your own lawyer.
Yeah. So
exactly, and that's a bit of a problem, right? That we are sort of we have to, as producers or post producer, we have to ask people within the different VFX vendors, and that's not really a situation we like. So it's a bit of a problem in the Nordic countries or smaller production companies.
Yeah. So you would see the ideal situations that there's a freelance VFX consultant or supervisor.
If you don't have your own within your company, which I don't think a lot of Nordic production companies does have. As I said, I think we had 3 freelancers in Sweden, and then I know about 2 in Denmark and 1 in Norway. And I don't. So it's tough, but I agree that that's how it should be done. But we're really babies in this sense in the Nordics.
Yeah, maybe from a producer's perspective, continuing what Samuel said, it's kind of like when you hire a cinematographer, you don't assume that they'll only work with one camera rental company, and then would that be a fair sort of example of that you can only hire kit from their company? Yeah. Good. So I guess that's hopefully a thing that will evolve. I'd like to dig deeper into, as you said, a VFX supervisor would be good to have, but Anna, you are a post-producer. Could you maybe explain to the audience what's the difference between a VFX supervisor and a post-producer?
Yeah, on the productions where I feel that I can do the most, I'm usually hired very early, as I mentioned before. A lot of times even before directors are on board, because I try to help the producers plan the full production. If they have a release date with a channel or a streamer, I help them count backwards and see when they need to start shooting for it to be feasible. And if it's not with the date they were given, we try to push the channels together. But then apart from that, I help them in early stages with the work you just mentioned, reading the scripts. And if I don't have the answers myself, I consult a VFX producer or VFX supervisor or try to get quotes from different companies. And then I also help out with the technical workflow all the way through production. And then I supervise all the editing and sound editing and mixing and all the VFX and grading and all the way through to online and masters and deliverance. So I'm usually on board more or less as long as the producers, save for the first part of developing the script, whereas a VFX producer is only on board usually later than that and just for the VFX. So I have very different things within my line of work.
Okay, great, thank you. So hopefully through these examples it's quite clear that the more you start using VFX, you should look at it as this is a department that needs an HOD, the same as a cinematographer or a set designer or production designer. I think it's quite a key thing to understand that it's not a thing you just add on top at the end. It is a new emerging field of department that's more accessible to filmmakers. So it will provide you with a lot of opportunities, but it does come with a lot of responsibilities to handle because it might otherwise backfire.
And if I may add one thing here, especially when we are dealing with stuff that we do, like LED production, it's like super crucial that everything is ready when the shooting starts in here, because people have seen this like kind of like Mandalorian thing, like where they move the mountains and do all kinds of cool stuff, but that's like pretty far from the reality. Like you can't really build the set like in 15 minutes in here. So you have to pay attention to this like from very early stages, and you have to talk with like the technical people, the producers, basically everybody who's involved in actually building the set. So I think it's super crucial that this whole thing is planned like from the very first steps, especially if you're planning to use LED on the production.
Yeah, great. Well, that's actually a nice segue into the future of VFX and how the landscape might evolve. So it would be interesting to hear from each of you what is in the future, or what's the latest developments in the VFX that producers should be aware of, sort of things just around the corner. I'll just throw it out to whoever wants to start first, or I can also point fingers then.
Well, I can start because I've always been interested in technology. That's, I think, one of the reasons why I also ended up kind of to this industry. The one thing is kind of known that computers will get faster every year, and it opens up new possibilities to tools and how we work. And I think, well, if you think when I did StarRec back in 2005, computers had 1 gigabyte of memory, and so it was kind of a completely different what is now. But for example, what we have seen already is the AI tools, artificial intelligent assistance is coming to compositing, maybe to 3D, kind of so that we can save some time. Let's say if computer, if we don't have green screen and we cannot kind of just click the green out, and of course it doesn't happen like that, just by clicking it can take even 2 days or even 3 days to click one shot out of the green. But if your computer program is so clever that it can recognize the people, the main shape, and the software can, the AI can draw out the shape, and it gives that for free to the artist, so that the artist doesn't need to spend 2 days of masking, rotating out the character if we need to insert something in the background. I think these tools are coming more and more usable all the time, and of course we can move more into real time. But one thing is certain, that if the real time computers get faster, so does the kind of the normal, not real time working methods as well. So I think that's kind of a really important that and I think the cameras are also developing quite rapidly. I think soon we are going to have cameras that save the depth information, so that we can add elements kind of behind the actors, and we can get the depth information from the camera, and hopefully the camera movement and all that stuff. So, yeah. And I'm not sure if you have encountered already this kind of data.
Like deep compositing, for example, yeah. So also in compositing, as in CG as well, I guess, like there's so many technical, like really clever technical people working in the industry. So like they are developing really clever tools all the time, so the tools make like the work so much faster. So I guess every day somebody's developing a cool tool, and then they share it with the team, and then the work gets faster. And yeah, it's really cool. And deep compositing, I don't know if you use it in Finland yet. Maybe not. No, I don't know. So yeah, that's another tool that. Well, I worked when I worked in Weta, they were developing it a lot, and now I guess companies in Vancouver or Canada, for example, are using it, and Singapore, and it's helping compositing a lot. It's difficult to explain here for people who don't work in the industry, but if you want to have a look on the internet what it means and how it makes things faster.
But in layman terms, does it mean because you've got the information from the camera, it means you can quicker, easier make more realistic? You're kind of placing it not on a flat image, but instead you kind of know where the depth of everything.
Yeah, you can like place different things and in Nuke, for example, and compare it to the add it to the distance, and then if you, for example, add like fog or smoke, you can also like it works as a deep data. It's not just like a 2D image, so it goes around the elements.
Yeah. So just to kind of the cameras don't yet save the data yet. Hopefully soon. So it's, and now I think it's really important also to get the camera motion, kind of all that lens information. How does the zoom lenses work, and if that translated and you can get that data super exactly to your working table, it will save a lot of time, because an artist can spend, let's say, if you have a shot where you are starting from really close up and a crane goes up, and maybe 10-second shot, it can be a task of 2-3 days just to track the camera information perfectly. So it's really time consuming, and if you can get that data from the set, so if something saves that data from the camera, how it moves, what zooms it uses, and a focal length and all that stuff.
I've been working.
From the real-time point of view, I have a couple of things. So basically we are kind of like approaching a situation where in a couple of generations we are actually able to like render in real time, like proper lighting, kind of like ray trace type of lighting and so on. And that's going to be like super huge, because that will bring up the real-time graphics quality like pretty close to the actual like current rendered like offline quality. And that will be really, really huge, even for the like, let's say, indie producers, where they can actually start doing stuff like way cheaper without having to wait for like ages to render stuff out. It's especially important for us because naturally, because we run real-time stuff in here, we need to get the quality as high as possible already in the beginning. So I think those things will be huge that is coming, like, for example, with Unreal 5, all these like better lighting options, better, like less limited polygon count, so on. And like Samuli mentioned about the tracking thing, that's like a crucial thing for us already. So we can actually track the cameras in real time and like make the background react to the camera movements correctly.
I think it's already, tracking is used a lot. There's a lot of different tracking systems that you can use to capture the data, how the camera moves, and you can also get the lens metadata in. So if you want to use that, all that kind of stuff, it's like already there if you want to use it. But the problem is that the kind of all the data handling, and there's not like so many standards in all that. So you need to think through the whole workflow if you want to have like track camera data, or and at the moment it's also possible to get that depth data. You can put a depth camera on top of the cinema camera that you film, or you can do a setup that you can kind of reconstruct the whole scene in 3D as well, so you can get that depth information. It's not like super precise. I wouldn't use it in comp, but maybe for some, I don't know, collisions, for some sims, something like that would be like that you already can do if you need that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like different kind of like AI solutions for example, tracking like character movements and such things in real time, which you can actually combine that with the real time stuff pretty easily. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of like new possibilities opening up.
but I don't see that the real-time quality will hit like the stuff that you can do offline at the moment. It will take like 20 years to get there. It's just you can do some stuff, but it's like if you want to have good quality offline, it's still gonna be like the thing that you will use in the future as well. So
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't say that real-time replaces it, but for certain things it's good, and certainly for previs is good. So you can get previs quality better, so people can understand what they want. Because if you just look out scenes that are like don't represent kind of the artistic vision, is difficult for all the departments to kind of visualize what the kind of aim is. But doing, for example, previous with better quality, it's a really it's beneficial.
Anna, did you have something you wanted to add, or I feel like I saw you wave, but maybe okay. Yeah, so I'm speaking on behalf of the laymen here. If that sounds at times overwhelming, it probably is, but I think that also points to the fact that it's good to have more and more experienced VFX or post-producers on your shoot production to help you navigate this landscape. But the positive thing I would take from this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that, as somebody said, computers and computing power keeps getting better and therefore cheaper. So what is today a premium service for some, in the future will be quite accessible to the average indie filmmaker. The same as your phone today is what governments dreamed of a couple of decades ago. So I think it's gonna make more and more VFX accessible. Obviously it's gonna make it more complicated, but if you have the right people, they can help you navigate that. Well, or I'm just living in a cloud cuckoo land, but yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. So moving on to other future technologies, maybe we should focus a bit more on virtual production, since I think it's quite a buzzy word at the moment. So maybe the Wireframe guys could talk a bit more of what kind of virtual productions you've done with finished productions and what you've been able to bring them, so people have a concrete example of what's currently possible for finished productions.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, virtual production isn't really anything new itself. It's been like exists for 20 years. If you just do something virtually related to production, is basically virtual production. People have been doing, for example, previs for ages with pen and paper. It's like these just new tools. But what we do is like it's called like ICVFX Studio. So it basically we have the kind of LED wall setup. So that's one way of doing virtual production. But virtual production can also be like ranging from like green screen productions or I don't know, whatever, doing everything in a box, like rendering everything, like some animations that you do. You can also use virtual production tools with that, but our studio is mainly special in that way that we have the big LED wall that we can shoot against, and we can get really nice lighting from. And what we've done so far, I think we have maybe like 12 productions here, ranging from like spots, and now we're doing our first feature film here. We're doing pre-production and starting to film in 2 weeks here. So that's the first bigger production in our house. But I don't know, maybe it would be better if you want to ask questions, or maybe Sami can ask some.
Well, the key thing about our setup is that, like, basically instead of trying to match everything and like trying to like see everything beforehand, trying to get all the lighting correct, trying to like figure out how it's going to look in the end, we can get much closer to the end result already in here by building the whole like setup, the whole like scene, whole lighting setup, all the backgrounds, everything. And then just basically like tweaking the stuff on the fly so that it matches nicely. That is, in my opinion, the greatest benefit of this tech that we are using. So it's not a magic bullet for anything, but it's super good at solving certain types of problems, and understanding like what kind of problems you can solve with this technology is a crucial thing if you want to succeed, for example, with an LED technology. We are internally like prototyping and testing a lot of all kinds of different tools. And the LED is basically just like the one of the tools in the tool set. But what we have been aiming for since the beginning is like trying to figure out like new ways of doing things. So basically what we are trying to do as much as possible is like flip all the like post-production stuff that can be done in the pre-production into that side. And that's the like crucial difference between the kind of like the old school technologies. That doesn't mean that we don't use post-production. Of course we use it, but like whatever can be done to get closer to the end result in the beginning is the key here.
Okay. Samuli.
Yes, I think VFX Supervisor, the production VFX Supervisor, one of his tasks will be kind of deciding that this will be done the old school way, and this will be shot in virtual production, and kind of deciding what scenes are optimal for certain technology.
Okay.
And it can be very shot dependent also. Wider shots, you cannot maybe get those against the LED screen, but some close-ups can be really, really nice, especially because one thing is really kind of visible in all the films. When you shoot against a green screen and you have a kind of really fluffy hair, it's really difficult to kind of to nail it exactly that the hair fits the background that's later added. And I think that's really kind of what sells the because you have the right brightness information behind the actor's hair and when you shoot it, and the real depth of field and all that.
And in addition to that, like we still can do, for example, these traditional things like we've been doing cases where we actually just take like the lighting from the LED panels, but we still place a green screen area behind the actors. So you can actually do the thing in post, but you still get all the like lit actors that look actually, and they will fit like the background immediately, like much better. And we can also get like super pure green screen from the LED screen. So it's basically like one click and it's almost gone, well, not quite, but like it's very, very close to like automated system. So those kind of things are kind of like the combinations between the old and the new.
Yeah, I think one of the kind of what we face in Iron Sky when we shot, because we spent 1 month in a green screen studio and we only saw green there, and it's your human eyes, they start to forget, they don't see the green anymore, and when you kind of position the camera and light the scene, you don't see that the green is super bright, and when you bring that material to offline and to editing, you can see that there's a super bright green screen there, and there should be quite dark wall there. And of course, in optimal scenario, the green, the brightness should kind of be similar what you are going to insert later on. So these, I think it's really important to see. Even if you use the halfway and you can kind of test out, okay, if you have rendered out the backgrounds already using the old tech kind of old pipeline, and you just put a still there and you can see that, okay, now the lighting is matching perfectly. Of course, you can do that with kind of with traditional tools as well, which show kind of a crude green screening real time, and of course those tools are really important.
And there's one thing related to that which is maybe a little bit like neglected, but like it's super important also for the actors that they can actually see the surrounding environment, because that like gives much better performance out of them usually. It's much better to like you know, like instead of saying that, like now you're sitting in front of green screen, think that you're in a cafeteria in Paris. You just put the Paris into the background and it like brings up the feeling already. And that's like super important. In my opinion.
I remembered I ran with my laptop showing the concept art and the 3D model to the actors on the set in Iron Sky. Hey, this is kind of the place you are going to be. You have a huge wall here. The flag is there. And just imagine this when you start acting.
I guess it also helps for reflections, like if there's like a car on set, for example, it's not like so that the green screen is reflecting to the car, it's the background, so you don't have to do the reflections later with CG or something else.
We've been doing commercials, like for example car shots and stuff, and it's like it's super difficult to do some of that stuff in post. So basically, like anything that has like moving reflections, for example, they are hard to do. So.
Well, that kind of would depend a little bit what you want, but certain kind of shots, of course, you can do within a LED volume. But for example, all the wide shot establishing shots, you need to probably do it in the location, because that's obviously you cannot do in a studio. Doing like some wide drone shots, for example, that's not going to happen. But I would plan it pretty well, so you get all the plates you need. If you want to take the plate route, of course, it's cheaper and you get more realistic results. If the content of the film would be something like not real, like science fiction, fantasy, whatever, that you need to construct the environments, you can do it. So you can render while you're shooting, for example, with Unreal in real time, or you can render the CG plates, offline renders, to get better quality as like video plates as well. Get the different directions, but you should really plan what kind of rig you use to shoot the plates, that they kind of work with the LED, and you get all the angles you need also. And think about that would be really critical. Then when you have the plates, it's like we can play back them easily here. And
yeah, so there's like a couple of things that I would personally like to note on here. So we had a couple of cases where there's been like plates taken out of like stock footage, for example, and then when people come to the studio, they don't necessarily consider that the angles of the plates can be completely wrong. You can't use, for example, plate shot on drone. You can't use stuff that is like heavily packed. So you have to like prepare by making sure that your material is already like working from the angles that you actually want to shoot from, and that it's like high quality enough. So for example, we have been using for this current film that we're working on, this is not going to be a driving plate, but anyway, like we have been using a custom rig to get the plates in very, very high quality. And there's certain places where you can, for example, buy driving plates that are actually done for this purpose. So
I wouldn't maybe, I think it, for feature films especially, you probably do it custom always. You're not gonna buy stock stuff and use that.
But for commercials, for example, so.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, plan it like so you know the plates that you need, and you know what you're gonna shoot, and shoot high quality, good cameras. The lens choices are also very like crucial to have like proper lenses. You can go like really crazy with that. For TV series in States, they kind of match, they shoot the plates with the same cameras that they film. They focus on the same place, that they know in advance that what they're gonna shoot, what's the focus distance in each shot, and the plates, they focus them with the same lens, so they match. So you can kind of like go crazy with all the detail with that, but basically get good quality plates, and then we can play back them in our LED volume easily, and you can get really nice lighting reflections, and something that you can also hook up. You can use some kind of moving platform on the bottom of the car, so you can get like actual nice movement. Because in Finland, at least what I know, it's usually, and probably in other Nordic countries, there are not so many like motion control platforms used for films. Unfortunately, they're actually not like super expensive, so you can have kind of like the real motion with the car if you use this kind of stuff as well. But yeah, just
I'd like to add something to that, because I've been doing a lot of these shoots in Sweden or with a Swedish company that sometimes do their setup in other locations too, called Igelkott. And when I work with them, because everything you just said means that production needs to prepare a lot of the shots for the backgrounds. When I work with Igelkott, they also produce the plates, and they almost always use a 360 camera that they use on a really low convertible car, and they prep all these shots for us before we go into the studio, which for me as a producer or post-producer feels safe, because I know that the plates will actually work for the purpose. Does that all happen with you or some other LED companies in Finland?
Yeah, well, for example, in our case, we have like a custom rig that currently does like 180. So you in general, you shouldn't use like, especially the cheap 360 cameras, because the quality of them is not good enough, but like custom rigs with 360 capabilities is definitely okay.
No, but my question is more about, do you or any other studios with LED screens produce these for the production, so you know that they will be good?
Yeah, we can do that in-house, but we use, for example, our company uses another Finnish company called Coptercam, that for especially this movie, we needed like aerial plates, so they build a custom rig for us. But you really need to consult how the plates will be shot, that they work in the volume, and also with different LED volumes, the volume size kind of or the setup is like, some plates might not work with certain kind of LED setup, so you need to kind of be involved in prep and planning. how the
and this is my full point with asking the questions, that sometimes I guess it's hard for producers that haven't done a lot of very technical stuff to take the responsibility or to shoot the correct plates for it. So it's I think it's a big it's like a big threshold to get into this kind of production and understand, and that we need your help, because you guys know what we need. So I was just a little bit scared when you said that you shoot the plates.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's an option, you know.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing, of course you can do
Yeah.
it. We're happy to help in every step of the
Yeah.
way.
Absolutely.
And
We want to be involved.
Yeah, and we
Yeah.
always offer that we can test stuff out and, you know, go through that. So
Yeah.
so we definitely are involved in the planning stage always.
Basically, every time we've had a production here, we had like at least like one testing day that we make sure that like everything is going to work, and we talk with the people who are coming and make sure that they understand what kind of material is needed. That's it wouldn't work otherwise.
No.
Yeah, from my experience, because I've seen many scenes with car driving scenes, and that's kind of one of the most common uses of CG, and most often if you have had a green screen there and you have shot some plates, usually the end result is kind of it's not looking good. It's very difficult to get the real feeling of driving, and usually it just looks kind of wrong. And usually the reason is that because nobody is responsible for exactly matching the plates and the camera height what's needed if the background is added either in post-production or on some real-time studio. But it's really important that the plates match and that they have enough resolution. In one project we had 3 red cameras kind of in rig, and they were shooting kind of and had wide lenses, so I think it was 180 degrees coverage, and we stitched those together to get super high resolution background, and that was kind of the tool for in that production. And of course, if you have real-time background there and the camera can move there and track, so if you have 180 degrees of super high res kind of plate, I think that's really important. And usually the 360 cameras, their resolution is quite low. So I think it's really, if you want to have good car driving plates, you need to make sure that the angles are right. You know exactly, kind of you take the measurements on the set. What was the camera angle? Of course, this is if you are using traditional way, that you can repeat that motion and an angle exactly later on when you are shooting those plates. Very often it's just last half an hour, maybe 15 minutes left the shooting day, and we have these plates. Let's quickly shoot this. Open the van, try to shoot something, and let's hope the post-production can manage. And yeah.
From a producer's angle, it sounds like if you do it the traditional way, you shoot plates after you shot the scene, but with the LED screen, you need to do it the other way around, right?
Yes, you need to have, you need to know exactly angles and camera height. Well, it's very limited, fortunately, in a car setup. You usually have certain amount of shots you can do.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually one thing about this. First of all, I agree with Samuli about this, that you need the proper rig for that. So we've been using a similar red camera rig, but you can mess around with the angles and the horizon heights and stuff like that on the LED a little bit, but naturally you can't do magic. So if it's completely wrongly done, then you can't use the material. So yeah.
Yeah, just to little sort of story from my production past. I worked on Robot, the police series here, and there's a lot of cops driving in cars, and we wish we could have shot it either on green screen or the LED screen. So I think that's definitely one thing for producers to consider. It is always a pain, it seems, no matter if you're on location or green screen or against the background. Moving on with the virtual production side, I just thought if there's any other things, the panelists, because we've been talking a lot about LED screens or virtual production, however you want to call it, do you feel like there's other sort of smaller details the producers should be aware of before they embark on it, before we maybe move on to educating the next generation?
Markus, do you have anything insight in here?
Especially the LED related stuff, or like generally virtual production, or
just generally sort of, have you noticed, I phrased that poorly, do you feel like there's common misunderstandings producers have about the potential, what the potential is for the LED screens? I think I've heard other people say like maybe the Mandalorian hype sort of created maybe a slightly unrealistic expectations of what it is and isn't. It clearly is a great tool, but there might have been some misunderstandings with the PR along the way.
There's certain things that I have at least personally noticed is that like you have to understand, like, for example, what kind of camera angles are suitable for the LED. So like there's cases where people have tried to do, for example, super wide angle like shots, and they are not the best possible option to do, in my opinion, in LED. That kind of thing is not clear for everybody.
Yeah, for producers, maybe the whole shift, because it would involve kind of like doing budgeting really differently as well, because you need to kind of budget more for pre-production to do the content that you put on the LED wall up front. So that's a really different way of doing productions compared to what you would usually do. Those like stuff that you would do post, you need to kind of shift some of that stuff to that up front, and maybe that the planning stage need to be really long to get everything done. For example, let's say in Mandalorian they had the scenes, every scene was ready 7 weeks before they shot, but we haven't had a single production that the content hasn't been delivered like the day before or something. So so that
leads into very interesting situations when like the expectations don't really match because we haven't gotten the material early enough and we haven't like been able to give the feedback early enough. So then we just have to like do some smoke and mirrors and get it working somehow, like really quickly.
Yeah.
Anna, do you have something from a post-producer point of view? Your mic is muted, it seems.
I haven't really worked with a lot of that. I've done a lot of courses and I understand a lot of it, but we've always come to the conclusions in my productions that it hasn't been able to fit into the schedule or to the budget, or that it's been the best option yet, or that the time frame has made it not possible, or that the producer is not progressive enough to want to try something new. So I don't have anything really to add, but it would be great to work with it in the future.
Great. And Samuli?
Yes, I think about talking about the Mandalorian, I think that was they have the best behind that project, absolutely best of this world, and more or less unlimited resources to do R&D, and of course it was astonishing, and it kind of looked really nice. All the helmets, they were kind of you couldn't get that feeling using green screen, but of course it was also a kind of a marketing speech that many of the film producers also bought, that hey, if we have this technology, we can do VFX almost for free. kind of a extra, kind of a just. That was the feeling, and because I've run into this debate many times, and the truth is that in Mandalorian, the shot count what they got kind of a in camera. I think it was one of the every 10 shots, and all the other 9 other shots they needed to be fixed or swapped the background in post-production. So, and of course I'm sure they are getting every episode they are getting better and better. The tools and the experience is getting better, and of course it's how it goes when you have new technology, and so it's kind of it has surprised many people that there's a lot of other expenses, and I think. Let's say we have super fast computers and we can do super realistic 3D kind of in real time. Let's say in 5 years, perhaps we can do kind of this kind of interior that looks real, and nobody can say that this is rendered real time, and we can put that in real time to the background behind the actors. It also, let's say, if a film production has 10% of the total budget goes to VFX, maybe it's about the cash flow also. You need to spend maybe half of that VFX budget early on, so it completely shifts the when you need the money for the VFX side also. So I think that's a really important topic also when more and more productions are shot using this technique. And I think it's also, when you shoot against green screen and maybe when you edit the film and you say that, hey, I think this is too much, we don't need this scene, we can skip this, let's not do VFX for this scene at all. But you need to do that kind of that work in forehand if you are going to shoot it, if you are going to use the real-time option. But in kind of you can later on decide that we do this and this scene, and only this shot will be VFX shot. So you can also, it's because at the end of the film production, how you manage the budget, the VFX is kind of your best tool to manage, lower the budget. You can, because usually it's kind of the first edit of the film, you have double amount the VFX shots you can afford. That's kind of normal. And then you cut half of the VFX shots. You go shots one by one with the director. Do you really need this? Do you really need this establishment shot or not? So, yeah.
I could also say something about the virtual production versus like traditional effects or visual effects or comping. So I guess for the audience to know as well, I guess you still need, if you need like effects like fire or fog or something in the shot, you need to add it in like in a traditional way in comp, and you can't just think that you can do everything in virtual production. How do you usually do it in
Fireframe?
Sorry.
Yeah, so the key thing is that, like, first of all, this doesn't replace the need for this traditional stuff. This is kind of like an addition. So what we recommend pretty much in every case is that, like, for example, if it's possible to combine a real set with the like virtual set, that's the best combination. That gets the most realistic result. And we still run everything through post if necessary.
Yeah, and well, for example, the wider establishing shots, you cannot do in the LED. You do them differently. All kind of like challenging VFX shots, like simulations. You need to kind of or stuff that is like in front of the actors, or like, I don't know, whatever VFX will be needed will be done in post anyway. so it doesn't really replace that. But I think that we're kind of discussing, okay, this is kind of the topic of the talk, the VFX, but the virtual production and LED production, for example, the cost savings mainly, they don't come from having the VFX kind of stuff in the LED, but it comes from that you don't need to take 150 people crew to other side of the world. You can do different locations during the same day. So the lighting setup is like moves faster. You need less crew. You can extend the set designers or the production designers can kind of like limit how much they need to really construct the props, and we can extend them in the LED that it will be cheaper. So the cost savings mainly come from other places than VFX if you use LED production. So.
We actually had 2 questions in the audience as well. Could you raise your hands again? So.
Thanks. My name is Sanna-Mari and I'm production designer, and I would like to ask if or what are the footsteps to make sure that the physical set and the VFX or the blade are fitting together both when shooting, like in physically and in style. What needs to be done?
That's actually a really good question. I think, like, first of all, it's most important that you have kind of like a vision beforehand on what you want to achieve. That's the step number 1. It helps a lot. For example, in our case, we've been having these prep days where we bring the key people in and make sure that, like, you know, the set designer understands what they are trying to build, the lighting technicians understand how they are planning to light it, and so on. So I think it's a combination of like several different things. And you have to also understand how you're planning to build the 3D background. Are you going to use plates or are you going to use like real 3D? In most of the cases, for example, for commercials, the plates have been the better option because you can get to like closer to what you want much faster and cheaper. And then you can find the like fitting whatever you want to build on top of that easier, maybe.
There are some like specific considerations for production designers, because for the LED light, for example, it's like you need to test some materials, so you don't have free hands to kind of, well, of course you can use every material, but you need to kind of test some materials, how the LED lighting, for example, affects. There's a phenomenon called metamerism, kind of like how the LED wall shifts some colors for some materials, and so there's a lot of like detailed stuff that you can go into, but basically I would do kind of like some blocking or kind of 3D pre-visualization, what you want to build as a practical set, and what will you use to extend it. So what part will be the physical set and what will be kind of the virtual set. That would be really beneficial, and I don't know.
Yeah, what I noticed from our like cases, what works best is that like usually the more you can kind of like glue together the foreground and the background, the better it naturally works. So the foreground is mainly used for like bringing in this like parallax feeling of things. That's super important to understand, that whatever you can put in there is going to like kind of like fool the eye to think that you're actually in the set, even if it's like mostly rendered on the background. So even small things can be super important.
Yeah, and the practical set, because it's real and it looks real, it's of course it will sell the illusion better, and usually how you shoot against the LED wall is that you kind of throw the focus off, so you focus on the foreground, and the LED background is like so much out of focus that it's not really, you don't have to have like really super detailed stuff there, but I think it's kind of you have to go through that like test.
Yeah,
testing would be that, and one thing that is pretty difficult is to kind of extend it. If you, let's say you would want to extend a practical floor to the LED, it's like almost impossible. You can do like some ground or something like, but extending something physical so it would naturally blend in straight away to the LED. It's super tricky.
Yeah, especially because, for example, in our case, the LED volume itself is curved. So like you can't fake like straight corners between the floor and the walls, for example. But if you, let's say that you build an outdoor scene and you have like, for example, a fence blocking the bottom of the LED, that works perfectly. Just as an example.
Yeah, and that also, to get that work, it involves the gaffer, because you need to kind of, the LED itself gives light, so it's the kind of the border or the in between the practical and the virtual set is something that you need to really plan ahead and test it if it works.
Yeah, Samuli?
Yes, I worked with many set designers, and from the set designer's perspective, we are carpenters, like the real carpenters. So it's I think it's not the set designer's responsibility to think the technical side. She or he has a vision that the set should look like this, and then we can bounce it together that, hey, maybe we should have the cut here, this is real and this is digital. And when we hammer the CG walls and carpets and everything there, it's up to set designer to comment those and say that I want to have a blue wall instead of red. So I think it should, our department, the VFX department, should be also kind of treated as just an extension to the normal production departments.
Yeah, and one key thing related to that is that, like, for example, in our set, it's often like quite easy to, or easier to make the background match to the foreground than the other way around. So we can play around with like different lighting setups and different ways of like colorizing the background, for example, or cutting out some pieces in cases of plates, or like gluing them together to like extend the set even more and stuff like that. It's in one way a little bit easier for us to mess around with that than to actually like start rebuilding the set if it doesn't work, but it still needs a lot of careful planning. So there is no magic bullet in here.
Yeah, and of course some things cost more in CG, and so let's say if you want to have a really big hall in CG, it doesn't, the size doesn't bring any additional costs necessarily. So you can just repeat one chair and it's free. Kind of a simple in ways to put it. So of course the set designer needs to be also kind of understand that this and this is okay, and kind of understand also a little bit from the VFX side. But of course there will be always a VFX supervisor who is kind of consulting and telling that, yeah, we can add as many chairs you want, doesn't cost any extra.
Jonna, do you have anything to add from a compositor side of things?
I was just thinking that I've been working on a project where the VFX Soup was actually like there was like a huge set built on a stage, and then of course compers or prep people needed to do lots of work for those. This was actually on Hobbit, and then in the end when I was comping it, the VFX Soup was like, actually we can just use CG for the whole set, like we don't need any of this set. And then I was like, oh my god, like all this work for the set and all the work for like prep, there's like lots of tracking markers, then all the comp work, and I was like, no, I want to use this like set. I don't want anything, like everything to be CG. So sometimes it depends also on what's the idea of the VFX Soup or the director.
Okay, great, thanks. I think we had another audience question. Yep.
Hello, my name is Anne Karttuna. I'm a production designer also, as Sanna-Mari. I've been thinking about this. We talk about like some like special technical things and how to do things and how to make them real. But how to, in general, we all know that the pre-production it pays itself back. You know, somehow we know it as we work there in production or art department or post or whatever. But how to sell this fact to producers? Because I mean, it's always like somehow it's always. I see that lots of problems come from because there hasn't been, let's say, time to design, or there hasn't been resources to design beforehand well. So how to sell this thing that before it should be done in pre-production, before pre-production. I mean, so that the pre-work is essential to make a good results also with VFX. So how to sell this to producers? I'm especially maybe thinking about the Finnish environment and our domestic industry. What are your experiences in that? I have my own experience, but let's not talk about that now.
I might actually throw that to Anna, who's not Finnish but has worked on a Finnish production, if that's okay.
Yeah. Well, this is one of my the things I'm most passionate about, trying to change this in my country. And for me, since there are so many shows at the moment, I have the luxury of choosing which producers I work with, because I think we pretty much come down to that, at least in Sweden, there are, since there are so many productions, a lot of producers are new and not that experienced. And I think this really comes down to the producers needing to educate themselves on how we do films nowadays. I feel this is a huge problem here, and I've found a few that listen to what I'm saying. And as I mentioned before, the production we did in Finland, we had a great crew, a lot of great people, but this was still, as you said, I don't remember your name, the production designer. They didn't understand this, and went ahead and had the production designer create a lot of really expensive set pieces. And if we had listened to the rest of us, we probably would have done more of this in post instead. So I don't really know what the solution is, but for us here in Sweden, we try to work together with the TV channels and streamers and with the post facilities to try and create this awareness of producers needing to educate themselves. I think that's the main area that needs to be changed. But having people on board like me and post producers that know what they're doing, or VFX producers or supervisors early on, and one of the other things I try to do really early is to explain to people that production designer need to work together with a VFX supervisor really early, and that's also sometimes really hard for me to get across, and of course with the DP and the director as well. But it's a tough one. It's really tough, and I guess you have more or less the same problems in Finland.
Yeah, we noticed that it's like super tough. Like we had a lot of people visiting the studio naturally because we're a new place. Like we invited the whole industry to visit us, but like some people instantly grasp the idea, like what is the point in here? And for some people, it's hard to like kind of like get the big picture where this is useful and where this is not useful. And we had some pretty nice stuff done with people who actually understand the whole point. And I think like by showing like what can be actually done, that's the correct way of doing things. Of course, it's easier for us to like invite people over and show like what kind of things we have done and like show how they are done.
There's a follow-up question.
Yeah, I was thinking about this like from point of content also, because it's always like as a production designer, for me it's natural that for example, like in post, for example, exteriors or buildings or whatever is seen, it's also part of my work also, and if producer or director is doing it with VFX department, it's a bit strange because they have to do somebody else's work. Then it's somehow it's part of my design. Or of course we do it together. It's a joint work, but somehow responsibility might be also in my department. So, and now I think about if you are leading some education or some course or whatever, I really hope you talk about this thing, because I think it's in University of Vocational Arts, or how do you say, AMK. Yeah. So I know there is no, they don't teach the production design or at least very little about art department things. So, this is my experience. So I really hope that you take this somehow, so that, I mean, the joint work, which is really essential. And it's always I hope it leads to better results as a visual narrative things. Yeah.
And I think Samuli earlier said quite well of seeing the VFX work as sort of set building, or like a carpenter.
Yeah, it's a tool, but the challenge is, of course, the production designer usually leaves the production after the principal shooting is done. Because they don't pay. Yeah, they don't have any reason to pay, and usually then the director can finally free some brain power to, okay, we shot this, but maybe it should be like this. We can extend this shot, and then especially in Finland, the production designer is left out. Even DOP is left out because. Yeah.
We'd like to be there, but there is no money.
Yeah.
It's always run out of money.
So basically, usually the VFX studio has their own concept artists and production design in house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Design for some piece of art, like a movie or.
Yeah. It should be kept kind of a. Yeah.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like as we should start thinking of VFX as part of pre-production. Some of the pre and production needs to sort of overlap into the post side, especially at the HOD level. I think there's another question there. Then we'll start moving on to education.
Hi, Anne from Audiovisual Producers Finland.
Right.
I'm the manager on sustainability there. So my question is slightly related to this, how to convince the producers. But I'm thinking, what is the level on discussion concerning sustainability and VFX? Because obviously, you mentioned in the fireframe, Markus, you mentioned people and crew do not need to travel long distances due to VFX. So I'm thinking about, because that is definitely the future of the industry, so that sustainability could be an asset when talking about why should we do things with VFX. So any ideas on this? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard for me to imagine that you can do let's say a commercial where you have 5 different locations around the world done in one day in any other way. So I think that talks quite a lot about the fact that this saves on the travel cost, this saves the environment, this saves a lot on the overall organizational overhead of things. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that travel is definitely a big part of doing what you said. Moving on, since since Ilmari has been sitting here very patiently, waiting for the education segment to start, so we'll move on to how to address these things with the future generation. And obviously, as these tools become more readily available, demand is going to increase, and therefore talent. So maybe let's reintroduce Ilmari and the Tampere School and the future program. So maybe you want to talk a bit about it so we have the context.
Yeah, of course. And it's been nice to listen what everybody's saying and have to take part of all of these things here. So Well, this study program or the specialization education program started from need because, well, I guess, for example, Troll VFX started getting more and more these big productions, and of course, there's a lack of people who they could hire quickly to do them. So, of course, well, I started as like a 360 VR company in 2015, and there was nobody who knew something to do, and there was actually not really kind of a business in Finland for that then. It was really difficult to start doing anything. Well, that didn't happen here, but for example in VFX, because then you're immediately dealing with a lot bigger productions, a lot bigger budgets. So how can you take the risk to kind of ramp up the business and hire 20 people who don't actually know the tools they would be working on? So it's a specialization education program, so you need to have the like a bachelor's degree at least to take part studying on that. So it's aimed to people who are already professionals in the field or at least have some experience. And when we started planning it, we of course discussed with like relevant companies in Finland and asked that from those companies who do VFX in high level, let's say like that, so that what are the most essential skills, what they should need. So we're kind of not going to have a study program that is like slightly everything. We are focusing on, of course, that, well, it starts from learning the pipeline, VFX pipeline, everything from there, but that's kind of a small part in the beginning, and then it goes towards through all these steps what you need to know. But the focus for the student is that they could kind of get assets to be a VFX artist. So I guess like you asked that how to sell this to producers, and well, I feel that it's the kind of the same question almost in every field that is out of the actual place when everything happens around the camera. So you need to sell the things to do done in post-production or in pre-production and everything. So I guess like during this, I hope that we can have some sort of or start building some sort of I don't know, serious work. We can, for example, arrange events, educate also some other people than just the VFX artists. But like I think the really important part there is, I think Samuli agrees that because there isn't the nuke training in any school in Finland at the moment, at least as far as I know. So the big part of the training will be that the students get good PCs and nuke training, so they would learn the software, which is rather expensive to start doing business with if you don't have actually kind of use for that. So also the relevant thing I think is that we plan to work on like existing material. For example, been talking with Samuli that we could have actual shots from Iron Sky, so that the students then could actually do the work and their own versions, or trying to replicate the workflows and what needs to be done for a movie shot. So we are not going to just play around with the projects they imagine themselves. So actually having like concrete movie stuff.
So very practical focused in that sense.
Yes. So that it will start next October, this year's October, the training, and take roughly 1 year. And I feel that in the end there will be kind of I plan to. I'm the responsible teacher, but I'm not going to be teaching each of these things because I'm not specialist in those. But in the end, I feel that the students should have kind of a manual of the VFX production and how everything goes from the beginning and who who does which job in which phase and so on.
Okay, great. And since we have such a varied background of panelists, I thought I'd also ask, since you're also in early days and probably still going to be planning things, like how does everybody else on the panel see like the future of education in VFX? Like what's the best way to educate the next generation? Or if there's people interested in learning VFX, what's the best approach? Somebody?
Well, of course, getting people to kind of see what jobs there could be, so that I think it's important to show students that, hey, you could do animation, you could do sculpting, if that's kind of your thing. If you have done real life sculpting, you can do 3D models. Pretty much kind of the same technique and mind setup. And if you want to do compositing, Nuke was mentioned here. Nuke is basically one tool in the world that all the VFX studios use, and that's also the reason why it's so expensive. And yeah, so it's really important to use that tool, and because everybody is using that. But I think it's important to kind of show that, hey, there's a lot of things you could be interested in, and kind of give the spark to the students. Of course, I think it's important to start with kind of a well, from the start. So I think it would be not so good idea to start learning to teach, for example, how to groom a monster, kind of going to the specialized kind of a teaching, and of course I know that there's a lot of film schools in VFX schools in the world where you can pick a course. I want to groom a monster, and there's a line for that. It goes to that deep, and it tells also that the industry, it's very kind of there's a lot of artists and kind of the specialized, the area is very tight, they're very narrow, and if you want to be really good, you need to kind of go and try to nail that area. And so it's not like you can be a superstar and you can do everything. No, it's kind of you become just an average if you try to master everything. So I think that's kind of the important, that the students will learn and find there that this is calling me, and I want to know more about this. I want to look some tutorials online. I want to see this and this kind of happening in real life, and I think that's kind of the most important thing.
Yeah, maybe let's ask John now, because you are one that has specialized. So how did you choose that this is what I want to do, and what was sort of briefly your path to it?
Well, I actually studied in the Design Institute of Lahti, and at that moment the course was called Multimedia Design. So we studied everything like film, animation, photography, what else? Web design. And in the end I just thought, or many people felt, that we know like little from each of these sections, so I wanted to study more, so I went to study to England, and I studied VFX, actually digital, it was called digital effects, so yeah, so I graduated as a master in digital effects, and we did also like lots of like special effects in the studio, so we filmed like fog and not smoke, but things like that. So we did like practical effects, and then we did CG effects, or yeah, we combined them in Nuke. But the thing that made me go to England that time was that actually in Finland there wasn't anything, there wasn't like a course that time that I could pick because in England they already had like nuke in the university, and it's really great that you have picked nuke this time, because this has been lacking from Finland for a long time, and it's really expensive product. So it's really difficult to buy for, like, it's so expensive. So even companies in Finland, I believe it's quite expensive. So, and in there's no like a student, how do you call them in English? Like students can't like load it for free, like for example Maya. So that's great that you're doing it.
Yeah. I can say we use Nuke as well at Anima, and we just paid our licenses, and it was an eye-watering amount.
Then you also have to pay for rendering licenses and this kind of thing. So, yep.
Good. Yeah, Anna.
I would just like to add something that's sort of connected to this, and that has to do with film training in general. I've been trying to talk to our main film school here a lot about it since I worked there, that all the other strands of filmmaking need to learn about this too, from script writers all the way through, because if we don't teach them how the new way of filmmaking is, it's going to take even longer. So I think that's important too. So they know what can be done, even scriptwriter, what can be done, what's expensive, what's not, so they don't limit themselves, or they don't, just so they know the whole process. And it has to do with the editors too, and the DPs and everything. I feel that they're a bit behind in the trainings here. I hope it's better in Finland.
Yeah, and there's one thing that I would like to add in this side is that, like, it would be extremely beneficial to also learn these like real-time tools like Unreal Engine and Unity maybe, because first of all, you can use those for previs to like very, very large degree already. And I think the industry is overall moving towards the like real-time rendering things. And for example, Unreal is one of these tools that people are picking up now. And for example, here in Finland, there seems to be a pretty big like hole in like between the gaming industry guys and the movie industry guys. There isn't much people who can actually use Unreal to a like very deep level. And that would be like very beneficial to find those people. So I would definitely focus on those.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And we will have part of the studies, there will be this like emerging VFX technologies, and that also covers the IC-VFX. And actually at TAMK, we teach like really the basics of Unreal. We have been trying to get like real Unreal courses. The teaching would then be also done with part of the Keho Interactive people who work with like real-time Unreal stuff all the time. And well, I just heard that this spring also the Games Academy, they also are starting to do stuff with Unreal and not just with Unity, which I think is great. So there are signs that these are kind of coming, and also the interest to work with IC-VFX stuff is raising. So in the future, yes, and during this VFX artist study program, there will be the part, like one part of this, and I'm sure that we will also visit at your studio with the students at some point. But yeah.
Yeah, Mikael Lahtikari, cinematography student from Aalto University. My question to you is there going to be cooperation with our school? Because I think what Anna just said, that the problem is that there is quite a lack of knowledge of what we could actually do. And this discussion over here, this could be really beneficial for all of us as students in the field.
I really hope so, that we could have this sort of collaboration in some way, so we could actually, well, like after this session, share some thoughts and think how we could do it. So yeah, of course, there's like, well, this study program got funded to be exactly like this special education program, so that might restrict something, but of course we can do something out of that. Yeah.
Good. By the sounds of it, it sounds like you've already talked to a lot of the existing companies. So is the plan to have sort of continuing dialogue between the students and the companies, or how does it sort of?
Yeah, well, of course this has been done in pretty quick way. So this, I think the planning started less than 6 months ago already, from zero almost.
Yeah.
And now we have the curriculum online, so you can check that what the courses will have in them. And next week we are actually going to talk with some of those visiting lecturers or teachers about the content that they could like lecture and have. So yes, we kind of, there are many ideas what you could do with this kind of study that's interesting field, but we kind of ditched out most of the just nice and interesting things and focused on the practical stuff that needs to be done.
No, that's good, because I think in the world of animation we have a need for people like you, and I know Trollhätted and I'm sure Fireframe will in the future. There's definitely a big need in the country for that. So I think the next question for that is, besides training the talent, I think we probably need to also think of how do we retain that talent. Jonna, for example, you've done a long career abroad as well. Do you feel like it's still more attractive to do it abroad, or is there a way for Finland to retain the talent it trains?
Yeah, so I've been working in the Philippines as well. I went to train people there, and the students didn't know anything about VFX that time, and in the end they could do like paint and rotoscoping. So of course, straight away they were like, oh, okay, I'm going to apply to, I don't know, Australia, different countries. Of course, Philippines is different than Finland, but I would say the salaries could be better in Finland, maybe, if I can mention that. So it's the same, for example, for nurses. They train lots more nurses here, but then some of them go to Norway, for example. But that's maybe the problematic thing, like how to keep like if you train 20 people per year, like that they stay here in Finland, that they don't straight away apply to other places in I don't know, London or other countries.
I think
yes.
There's like one thing about like keeping the talent in Finland. Like I noticed this on the gaming industry side, but like on the gaming side, Finland has like super good reputation, and that's because we have managed to make a couple of like really big hits, like for example from Supercell, Remedy, and those ones. That actually brings people to Finland when like the reputation starts growing, when you get those hits, and by that you can actually start paying better salaries also. So I don't think the salary is like the only or the key factor, but it's more like that people have to be involved in projects that they actually consider like really cool. That's something that I would like to see also on this side.
I think
yeah.
I just think I should try to elaborate a little bit about the differences between Finland and Sweden here, because I might be wrong, but I think we've come a bit further in the sense that there are so many big VFX companies here that only work with big studio productions. I wouldn't even go to them for a quote, and I'm just trying to figure out how they came there so early on. For example, Goodbye Kansas or ILP, they're huge, and I don't think they pay their people too bad salaries, and I guess it should be more or less equal with the ones that I go to too. But I guess we just started a bit earlier. What do you guys think? What could have been the reason for them to make it so big? I'm asking you guys that are in industry in Finland, because I guess you know a little bit more about the ins and outs of the actual VFX companies than what I would do.
I guess it's the same as with the music industry, that you guys are like 30 years ahead of us. So.
Yeah. But I'm just trying to see what they did and what the key factors were. But we did have training. We have had training for a long time. Unfortunately, the biggest and best one closed down a couple of years ago, I-12. But I know they're new ones. I just don't know too much about them. But when I was in London in 2013, going around to the different VFX vendors, they said that they always went to that school to pick their students, because at that time they said didn't have a lot of or any good VFX schools for real realistically looking VFX. So I guess we were just early in training too. So I'm glad you guys starting one now, but I hope there will be more to come, that you start a trend.
Absolutely, and I think this is also related to like funding structures and things like that. Like it's harder maybe to get like investments into bigger projects in here currently than in Sweden. So I think that is what is drawing the people in here, like or there, like.
And I think the main reason is that Finnish film industry as a whole is a lot less, so much smaller maybe than Swedish film industry, and in Finland there aren't too many like VFX heavy movies made, so there hasn't been like there isn't like kind of opportunities to work on really like big FX heavy movies for Finnish companies, for Finnish production, because there just aren't.
And you know, I just thought of one thing now. I think that why ILP, for example, or Gimfil in Norway, or Goodbye Kansas, that used to be Fido, was that they were lucky enough to be on Kon-Tiki, the Norwegian movie, and that they did so well. So that's sort of when they took off. So I think it was just a lucky strike also in that sense.
Yeah, this is what I mean by like the gaming industry hits thing, that like you have like one really good title, for example.
Yeah.
The whole industry turns like more interesting to people.
Yeah.
And I'd say from an international distribution background that I used to work at, it's like Finland's now catching up with the rest of the Nordics. So it's exactly like you said, like you get smaller hits that then lead to medium hits, and hopefully there'll be a big breakout one. So it's the whole ecosystem needs to sort of feed itself. Like with the Kon-Tiki, that brought reputation to the company, but also Kon-Tiki made Danish films probably even more attractive than they already were. So there's
Norwegian.
Sorry, Norwegian. Yeah.
But I'm also a bit interested in what you guys are saying about the collaboration with the games industry, because that's one of the things I think especially Goodbye Kansas does well. I mean, a lot of their production is just trailers for big, not just Swedish games, but international games. And I know they've also been working a lot with R&D with Unreal and doing really cool short films. And so I think they're really doing something great in that sense, but still they're not accessible to me as a Swedish VFX producer. I would never even go to them because it's just too expensive for our budgets, but they're great at what they do.
Yeah, it's a fact that, like, for example, the gaming side here in Finland is like super huge compared to the film industry in general. So I think like the collaboration between those two would be like very crucial. There is a lot of talent on the gaming side who could also do this stuff, but they're probably staying on the games because, like, first of all, there's more interesting projects, and it's a fact that they pay better. So that's my
and you know, that comes down all the way down to producers again, not really understanding the value or the cost of VFX, and that it's not just in the Nordics, also in the world. But I tried to work on that side too, influencing and explaining why it costs and how much it's worth in the end, and how a lot of times money you save in the end by spending and planning for it early on.
Right. I think Jonna had something.
Yeah, I just remembered that when I was applying to study, there was already like a gaming course, like 20 years ago. So maybe that helped as well, that the gaming industry started earlier on in Finland. Like, hopefully now when there's a VFX course as well, it will help.
Great. I think we have still time for one audience question, and then we'll start wrapping up.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot to say earlier, I'm Saku Suksi and I work in Finnish broadcasting company as a producer in set design and set construction department. What Anna said about it was really good mention that we should like think about this new ways of filmmaking, and in Finland we are such a small country, and it comes to the budgets also that everyone is quite like fighting for their prep and how much time do they get in the production. But I think we are in a good position. We should like build this kind of collaboration more and more. Like we have talented people in different sections, but how do you see, how could we build up like this working together, like knowledge wise? We have a set design department and VFX departments, a lot of professionals in industry. How do we build this kind of, it shouldn't be so formal, it could be like these kind of conversations every now and then where we invite people. Who would be the people or the companies who could arrange this kind? Just a few ideas.
Anybody want to comment on that? No.
It's really important, and I think at this point it's good time to start this VFX artist training here, because it didn't start from like out of nothing. There was a need for it, and then there's also the kind of backing of Film Tampere, for example, and their initiative there, and then there are companies who need actually the talented people to work on that. And then how I feel, for example, while working for a long time with Finnish broadcasting company, well, you have lots of people working, and there are the certain ones who are really into something. And I think like for that they should kind of spread the word and connect their close workmates and tell about all these things and possibilities, and then organize the events like you have done really well. And of course we hope that the corona situation will make it like easier to address this subject, to spread the word.
Great.
Yes, I think it's kind of talking about, because I've seen many times how they are shooting car scenes and all that stuff, and I think that knowledge is kind of the production members always think, how should we do this? And of course the information doesn't kind of maybe DOP can say that, hey, we use this LED screen in that production and it gave really nice results, and that's how the information might get to the other production. But I think there should be some kind of maybe Film Tampere can arrange some event and kind of where filmmakers from different areas can just chat and exchange ideas. I think that's the only way to kind of increase the knowledge, because usually the problems that kind of feel really big in a production, maybe too big, and shooting starts next week, and there's still a lot of problems to be solved, but they might be just really small problems that have been dealt many times before.
We often look across to Sweden for examples. So, Anna, do you have anything like this happening already?
I mean, I did arrange a course a couple of years ago at the Swedish Film School in Stockholm for producers to learn more about post-production in general, and we've also been trying with the post-producers. We don't have an association yet, but we have a group of people meeting regularly and trying to find collaborations with maybe the course as part of the Swedish Film Institute or the Producers Association. So we're trying to get to that, but we all have so much work to do as well. So it takes longer than what I wish it did. but just finding these bodies that usually do courses or conversations or seminars, and just suggesting that they bring this in, or even arrange courses for producers or DPs or whatever it could be.
Great, yeah. Sorry, Anna.
Yeah, I agree with you that it like shouldn't be that formal, or doesn't have to be that. We could just like plan it like a evening out every month or something. Like when I worked in Germany, there was this kind of thing happening, like all the VFX artists gathered in a bar one night a month, but it was like it's always work talk. It's never like something different. Like sometimes you would hope like, oh, like, can I talk something else? Because I just came from work, but it's all work talk. So it could be anywhere, like once a month, and people from our industry gather there. Like, so it doesn't have to be like a really organized event or something, I would say.
Yeah.
There's already stuff like that happening on the gaming side. It's been going on for years. For example, there's events like IGDA where all the gaming industry people go and gather, like all the people go there just to drink beer and like make connections. They make joint efforts to like take the knowledge that we have here abroad, like make international connections, stuff like that. This is like, in my opinion, question of like a bigger movement that needs to happen. Like we need the marketing people. We already have like people who are technical, but we don't probably have like sophisticated enough production pipelines for this kind of stuff. We need to build those. We need to learn from like potential partners abroad, like bring the information of that stuff in here, and then like bit by bit it starts growing more interesting for like foreign partners, for example, to start productions in here. That's how I have seen it happening on the gaming side.
Yeah, well, I think that's something definitely to take example from. So if you have the desire and the need, yeah, just start inviting people for pints, and then it might grow into a small event or a festival from there.
Yeah, that's how it works in London as well.
Yes,
right?
I've worked in London, so the sales industry did exactly that. There was this one specific pub with a room upstairs, so it was every month or so, it was just pints, and it was usually just work chat, which was exhausting, but also quite exciting, because you can share good and bad experiences, and there's still colleagues that I have to this day.
Yeah.
Exactly. But unfortunately, we've ran out of time. So I'd like to thank all the panelists for your time. Also to the audience, great questions. And yeah, just start inviting people for drinks and start asking organizations to do bigger events. Okay, great. Thanks everyone, and a round of applause for the panelists.